Fleet Admiral Kresthar stood on the command bridge of the Imperial Dreadnought Eternal Glory, watching the stars streak past on the main viewing screen. His four eyes scanned the tactical displays with practiced ease. After 300 years of service to the Valtharan Galactic Empire, very little surprised him anymore. The Nexus Corridor was the safest space in the known galaxy, protected by 47 of the Empire's finest warships. Nothing had challenged Imperial authority here in over 1,000 years. "Admiral, we have an anomaly," called out Sensor Officer Vrillix from her station. Her voice carried a note of confusion that made Kresthar's spine ridges stiffen slightly. "Define anomaly," he commanded, moving toward the sensor station with long strides. His scaled tail swept behind him, the unconscious sign of growing interest. "A slipstream signature, sir, but it doesn't match anything in our database." Vrillix's claws tapped rapidly across her console, pulling up data streams that made no sense. The energy pattern is completely unknown. Not Valtharan, not Krell, not even those strange Vorton signatures from the Outer Rim. Kresthar leaned over her shoulder, studying the readings. In 10,000 years, the Empire had cataloged every spacefaring species in the galaxy. There were 53 member races and another 200 primitive civilizations that hadn't achieved faster-than-light travel yet. Every single one had a unique slipstream signature like a fingerprint. But this was something new. "Distance?" he asked. 40,000 kilometers in closing. "Whatever it is, it's moving fast." "Very fast." Vrillix adjusted her instruments. "Sir, this doesn't make sense. The velocity readings show it's traveling at speeds that should tear any known ship apart. The structural stress should be impossible." The bridge fell silent. Officers at their stations exchanged worried glances. The communications officer, a young Valtharan named Torka, cleared his throat nervously. "Should I attempt first contact protocols, Admiral?" Kresthar nodded slowly. "Yes, all standard frequencies. Let's find out who's being so rude as to enter Imperial space without clearance." Torka worked his console, broadcasting greeting messages in 17 different languages, from formal galactic standard to the clicking speech of the insectoid Kresh. Minutes passed. The unknown ship continued its approach, steady and unwavering. No response came back. "Try again," Kresthar ordered, his voice hardening. "And add a warning. Unknown vessels that don't identify themselves are considered hostile under Imperial law." Another transmission went out. Still nothing. The silence was more unsettling than any threat. On the tactical display, the unknown contact appeared as a red marker growing larger as it closed the distance. The Admiral's tactical officer, Commander Zulvan, began running combat calculations. "Admiral, the energy signature is stabilizing. I'm getting better readings now." Zulvan's three eyes widened in surprise. "Sir, the ship is small. Maybe frigate class at best. But the power output—" He trailed off, rechecking his instruments. "The power output matches one of our dreadnoughts." "That's impossible. Nothing that small could generate that much energy." Kresthar felt the first stirring of real concern. In all his centuries of service, he'd never encountered anything that broke the fundamental rules of physics like this. The Empire's technology was built on principles that had held true for millennia. You couldn't pack dreadnought-level power into a frigate-sized hull. The reactor alone would be too large. Not to mention the cooling systems, the shielding, the structural supports needed to contain such forces. "Could it be a bomb?" suggested Vrillix quietly. "Some kind of suicide weapon?" "Possible," Kresthar admitted. "But why approach so slowly if that's the intent? A bomb would be launched at maximum velocity, making interception difficult." He straightened, decision crystallizing. "Bring the fleet to defensive formation Delta 7. Shields to maximum. Charge all weapons." Around the Eternal Glory, the Imperial battle group moved with practiced efficiency. Massive warships that dwarfed most planetary cities rotated into position, their shield emitters glowing as power surged through them. Energy weapons emerged from armored housings, targeting arrays locking onto the approaching unknown. "Fleet reports ready, Admiral," Zulvan announced. Kresthar studied the tactical display. The unknown ship was now only 20,000 kilometers away. At this range, sensors should be pulling detailed information about hull composition, weapon signatures, even life signs aboard the vessel. Instead, the readings were frustratingly vague. The ship seemed to shimmer in and out of normal space, as if it existed partially in another dimension. "Final warning," he ordered Torka. Tell them they have 100 seconds to identify themselves and state their intentions, or we will open fire. The message transmitted. Crescithar counted down the seconds in his head, watching the chronometer on his command console. 100 seconds, 90, 80. The bridge crew waited in tense silence. 70, 60, still nothing. 50 seconds, 40. Admiral, I'm detecting a strange energy buildup from the unknown vessel, Vrillix reported, her voice tight with stress. It's not a weapons charge. It's something else. Multiple systems activating simultaneously. 30 seconds. 20. Cresthar prepared to give the order to fire. 10 seconds, 5, sir. Zulvan's voice cracked with shock. I have weapons lock. Good, Crescithar said. Fire when? No, sir. We have weapons lock from the unknown. It's locked onto us. Before the Admiral could process this, every tactical screen on the bridge suddenly changed. Red warning indicators exploded across every display. Alarms began to wail. And there on every single screen in text that seemed to burn into the displays were two words that shouldn't be possible. Target lock acquired. Impossible, breathed Zulvan, frantically working his console. Sir, it's not just us. The unknown vessel has achieved weapons lock on all ships in the battle group, all 47 vessels simultaneously. Crescithar stared at the impossible readout. No ship could target 47 different contacts at once. The processing power alone would be astronomical. The precision required would demand computer systems beyond anything the Empire had ever built. Even their most advanced tactical networks needed several seconds to acquire and maintain locks on multiple targets. This ship had done it instantly. All of them. At once, how? He whispered, but he already knew the answer. He didn't know. The Empire didn't know. This technology, this capability, was completely outside their understanding. On the main viewing screen, the unknown ship finally became visible to optical sensors. It was sleek and dark, angular where Imperial ships were curved. Strange markings covered its hull, symbols that resembled nothing in the galactic database. And as Crescithar watched, feeling something he hadn't felt in 3 centuries, genuine fear, he realized one terrible truth. Someone out there had been watching, learning, preparing, and the Empire had never seen them coming. The bridge of the Eternal Glory erupted into chaos. Officers shouted reports over each other while warning sirens wailed in overlapping patterns. Admiral Cresthar gripped the edge of his command console, his claws leaving small scratches in the metal surface. Never in 300 years of service had he felt so completely outmaneuvered. Silence, he roared, and the bridge crew immediately quieted, though their fear remained palpable in the air. Commander Zulvan, analysis. How is this possible? Zulvan worked his console with trembling hands. Admiral, the targeting data it's precise beyond anything I've ever seen. The unknown ship isn't just locked onto our vessels. It's locked onto specific points on each ship. Weak points in our shield arrays, junction points in our armor plating, reactor cooling vents. He looked up, his face pale beneath his scales. Sir, it knows things about our ships that most of our own crew don't know. Theoretical vulnerabilities that exist only in classified design documents. That's impossible, said Vrillix. Those documents are kept in secure Imperial archives. Even if someone stole them, no species has sensors precise enough to target such small points across 47 ships simultaneously. Clearly, someone does, Crescithar said grimly. He straightened, forcing calm into his voice. Torka, demand immediate identification. Inform them that weapons lock on Imperial vessels is an act of war. The communications officer sent the message and waited. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then suddenly, Torka jumped as his console lit up with an incoming transmission. We're receiving something, Admiral, but it's not in Galactic Standard. It's not in any language I recognize. It's mathematics. Pure mathematical sequences. Route it to the translation matrix, Crescithar ordered. The bridge's main computer went to work, analyzing the sequences, searching for patterns, building a translation protocol from scratch. It took nearly 3 minutes, an eternity in combat time. When the translation finally appeared on the screens, every officer on the bridge felt their blood run cold. The message was simple. You fired on our science vessel in the Tau Ceti system 3 months ago. You took our people prisoner. We have come to take them back. Crescithar accessed the Imperial database with quick commands. Tau Ceti. Show me all incidents in that system in the last 6 months. There are no recorded incidents, sir, Vrillix reported after a moment. Tau Ceti is a frontier system. No colonies, no stations. It's marked as empty space. Might check again, deeper. Look for unreported actions. Look for, he paused. Look for destroyed unidentified objects. This time, Vrillix took longer. When she spoke, her voice was quiet. Sir, there's a buried report. 3 months ago, Patrol Commander Grixenel encountered what he described as an unknown probe in the Tau Ceti system. He followed standard protocol for unidentified vessels in Imperial space. He destroyed it. She looked up. The report was filed and forgotten. The probe was too small to be considered important. Kresthar felt a sinking sensation in his stomach. What was the probe doing when it was destroyed? According to Grixenel's report, it was collecting samples. Stellar radiation, cosmic dust, mineral compositions. Vrillix's eyes widened. It was a science vessel, and the report mentions recovering 3 intact data cores from the debris. They were sent to Imperial Intelligence for analysis. The cores contained biological material, living organisms, small ones. They were still being studied when she didn't need to finish. Everyone on the bridge understood. The Empire had unknowingly attacked someone's science mission, had killed crew members, had taken prisoners for study, and now whoever those people were, they had come for revenge. Open a channel, Kresthar ordered quickly. Full diplomatic protocols. Offer immediate compensation. Explain it was a mistake, a misunderstanding. Offer to return their people unharmed and— Admiral, Torka interrupted, his voice shaking. They're responding. The message appeared on screen. Again, it was translated from mathematical sequences, but the meaning was crystal clear. You established the rules. Imperial law states that unidentified vessels will be destroyed on sight. We are simply following your protocol. Fair is fair. Kresthar slammed his fist on the console. Damn it, Torka, tell them we're willing to negotiate. Tell them we'll release their people immediately. Tell them we'll revise our first contact protocols. Tell them whatever they want to hear, but convince them to stand down. Yes, sir. Torka frantically composed the message and transmitted it. The response came back almost instantly. Negotiations failed when you fired first. Prepare for consequences. Battle stations. Kresthar roared. All ships evasive patterns. Activate counter-targeting measures. Jam their sensors if possible. Around the Eternal Glory, the 47 ships of the Imperial Battle Group moved into combat maneuvers they had practiced countless times. Electronic warfare systems activated, filling space with false sensor readings and jamming frequencies. Shield strength increased to maximum. Every weapon that could bear on the unknown ship charged to full power. Sir, our countermeasures aren't working, Zulvan reported, his voice edged with panic. The enemy locks are still active. We're trying to jam them, but it's like they're not using normal sensors at all. Then break the locks physically. All ships rapid random course changes. Make us impossible to target. But even as the order went out, something worse began to happen. On Zulvan's tactical display, red warning lights started appearing across the fleet. One ship, then another, then 5 more. Then all of them. Admiral, our targeting systems are failing. Ships are reporting intrusions in their tactical networks. Someone is inside our systems. How is that possible? Our networks are isolated. They're not connected to external communications. I don't know, sir, but it's happening. Multiple ships reporting the same thing. Weapon systems locking out. Shield controls becoming unresponsive. Navigation showing false readings. Zulvan looked up, his face a mask of terror. Sir, whatever this is, it's not just jamming us. It's taking control. On the main viewing screen, the unknown ship remained exactly where it had been. It hadn't moved, hadn't fired. It just sat there in space, dark and angular and terrifying, while 47 of the Empire's finest warships flailed helplessly around it. Then every screen on every ship in the battle group went dark. For 3 heartbeats, there was absolute blackness. When the displays came back online, they showed only one thing, a countdown timer. 30 seconds, what is this? Kresthar demanded. What happens at 0? No one answered because no one knew. The timer counted down with mechanical precision, 29, 28, 27. Emergency jump. All ships initiate emergency slipstream jumps. Get us out of here. Jump drives aren't responding, sir. Nothing's responding. We're locked out of our own systems. 20 seconds, 19, 18. Kresthar watched the countdown and finally understood. This wasn't a battle. This wasn't even a fight. This was an execution. Whoever these people were, they had studied the Empire, had learned every strength and weakness, had planned this encounter down to the smallest detail. The Empire had treated them as primitive, as unimportant, as something to be destroyed and forgotten. That had been a terrible mistake. 10 seconds, 9, 8. All hands brace for impact, Kresthar said quietly. There was nothing else he could do. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And then, from the dark ship, something launched. The first thing Kresthar noticed was that there were no energy beams. No plasma bolts. No missiles with bright trails streaking through space. The unknown ship fired something else entirely, and for a moment the Admiral's tactical training failed him. What were those tiny objects launching by the thousands from hidden ports along the dark hull? Projectiles, Zolvan whispered, his voice filled with disbelief. They're firing physical projectiles. Solid matter. Sir, that's ancient technology, primitive. Why would... The sensors screamed. Every warning system on the Eternal Glory activated simultaneously. The projectiles weren't moving at normal speeds. They were accelerating, faster and faster, reaching velocities that made the numbers on the displays seem like errors. Point defense batteries, open fire, Kresthar ordered. Destroy those projectiles before they... 3 Imperial battleships simply vanished. One moment they were there, massive vessels bristling with weapons and armor. The next moment they were expanding clouds of superheated gas and debris. No explosion, no fire, just instant conversion of solid matter into vapor. What just happened? Someone screamed. Vrillik stared at her sensors, her claws frozen over her console. The projectiles, they're traveling at 90% light speed. They're just rods of metal, but at that velocity. She looked up, her face showing pure horror. Sir, at relativistic speeds, a small piece of metal has the kinetic energy of a nuclear weapon. And they fired thousands of them. The point defense batteries tried to respond, tried to track the impossibly fast projectiles. They were designed to intercept missiles and energy weapons, things that moved predictably, things that could be destroyed. But you can't stop a metal rod moving at near light speed. By the time sensors detected it, by the time computers calculated interception, by the time weapons swiveled to fire, the projectile had already hit its target, or passed right through it. Another battleship died, then a cruiser, then another. The shields that the Empire had spent centuries perfecting, shields that could absorb energy weapons and deflect particle beams, were completely useless. The kinetic projectiles didn't care about shields. They didn't slow down. They didn't explode on contact. They just punched through everything in their path, their tremendous velocity turning solid armor into vapor, turning reactors into miniature suns, turning proud warships into funeral pyres. Return fire. All ships, return fire. The Imperial fleet finally responded, unleashing a barrage of energy weapons at the unknown ship. Plasma bolts and particle beams converged on its position, enough firepower to slag a small moon. The space around the dark vessel lit up like a new star. When the light faded, the ship was still there, undamaged. Its shields, whatever they were, had absorbed everything without even flickering. More projectiles launched. More ships died. Kresthar watched his battle group being systematically destroyed, and there was nothing he could do. The enemy wasn't even moving, wasn't even trying to evade. It just sat there firing those terrible weapons, letting its shields absorb every counterattack. 7 ships destroyed, Zolvan reported, his voice mechanical, emotionless. Shock was setting in. 11 more with critical damage. Reactor breaches on 4 vessels. Sir, we're being slaughtered. I can see that, Commander, Kresthar snapped. Then he paused. The enemy had stopped firing. Why? They clearly had the advantage. They could destroy the entire fleet. So why stop? Admiral, I'm detecting new launches from the unknown vessel, Vrillik said. But these are different, smaller, moving slower. Thousands of them. They're spreading out. Forming a sphere around the fleet. Mines? I don't think so. They're not stationary. They're moving independently. Each one has its own power signature. Its own sensors, her eyes widened. Sir, they're drones. Autonomous attack drones. As she spoke, the drones began their work. They were small, no larger than a Valtheran's head, but they moved with frightening intelligence. They didn't attack randomly. They targeted specific systems on specific ships. One drone would zip toward a cruiser's communication array and detonate, leaving the ship deaf and blind. Another would attach itself to a destroyer's ammunition storage and burn through the armor with a plasma torch. A third would position itself near a battleship's reactor cooling, vent and fire a single projectile into the delicate machinery. Each attack was precise, surgical, devastating. They're not trying to destroy us, Crescithar realized. They're disabling us, taking away our ability to fight without necessarily killing us. But not all crews were so lucky. On the battleship Crimson Dawn, a drone's attack caused a reactor cascade. The ship exploded, killing all 3,000 crew members instantly. On the cruiser Starhammer, life support failures left the crew with a choice: surrender or suffocate in the dark. "Admiral, I'm analyzing the drone behavior," Sylvan said, his professionalism returning as he focused on the tactical problem. "They're using predictive algorithms. Every time one of our ships tries an evasion maneuver, the drones are already positioned where the ship is going. Every time we try to fire point defense, the drones are already behind cover or out of range. Sir, these aren't pre-programmed. They're learning, in real time. They're adapting to our tactics faster than we can deploy them." Crescithar felt something he'd never experienced in 300 years of combat. Helplessness. The Empire's military was built on overwhelming force and superior technology. They had always been the hunters, never the prey. But now, facing an enemy that thought differently, fought differently, used technology in ways the Empire had never imagined, they were utterly outmatched. "Fleet order," he said quietly. "All ships execute emergency retreat. Jump to rally point Gamma 7. We need to regroup. Warn the Empire, bring reinforcements." "Yes, sir." Torka transmitted the order. The surviving ships, those still capable of movement, began charging their slipstream drives. One by one, they opened portals and fled into faster-than-light travel. The unknown ship let them go. It didn't pursue. It didn't fire, except at the eternal glory. "Sir, we can't jump," Zolvan reported. "Our slipstream drive has been disabled. One of the drones hit the primary generator. We're trapped. Switch to auxiliary drive. Also disabled, sir, and our main engines are damaged. We have maneuvering thrusters only. Sir, we're dead in space." Cresthar looked at the main viewing screen. The unknown ship was moving now, finally coming closer. It grew larger as it approached, and the Admiral could see details on its hull. Strange markings, alien text, and there, near what might be the bow, a symbol. A circle, half white and half dark, with the dark half dotted with stars. Below it, words in an unknown alphabet. "Can we identify those markings?" he asked. Vrillix worked frantically. "I'm running them through the database. The symbol is unknown. But wait, the text. I'm getting a partial match. It's similar to symbols found in that probe we destroyed. The science vessel from Tau Ceti. Can you translate it?" "I think so. Give me a moment." Her claws danced across her console. "Yes, I have it." The text identifies the ship as TRNS Valkyrie, and below that a location marker, Sol System Earth. "Earth?" Cresthar searched his memory. That's a primitive world. Pre-contact species. We surveyed them 200 years ago. They barely had fusion power. They weren't supposed to achieve space travel for centuries yet. Apparently, Admiral, we were wrong. A new alarm sounded. This one was different, more urgent. The hull breach alarm. "Sir, something has attached to our outer hull," Zulvan reported. "Portside, near airlock 7. It's cutting through the armor." "They're boarding us." Cresthar straightened, his warrior's pride returning. If this was to be his last battle, he would face it with honor. "Sound the alarm. All hands repel boarders. Deploy the shock troops. Seal all internal bulkheads." He drew his personal plasma pistol, checking its charge. "Let's show these humans what it means to board an Imperial flagship." But even as he gave the orders, even as his crew prepared to fight, Crescithar couldn't shake one terrible thought. The humans had anticipated everything else. Why would boarding be any different? Commander Vextor of the Imperial Shock Troop stood at the entrance to Airlock 7, his plasma rifle charged and ready. Behind him, 20 of the Empire's finest warriors waited in formation. They were Valthorans, apex predators from a world where only the strong survived. Each one stood 8 feet tall, covered in armored scales, with claws that could tear through steel and reflexes honed by millions of years of evolution. They had never lost a boarding action. Never. "They're through the outer hull," reported his second-in-command, watching the door with all 4 eyes. "Cutting through the inner airlock now. 30 seconds. Vextor bared his teeth in what might have been a smile. The humans had made a mistake. You don't board a warship in small numbers. You don't give the defenders time to prepare. These primitives from Earth were about to learn a hard lesson about Imperial military might. The airlock door glowed red as something on the other side cut through it with intense heat. Molten metal dripped to the floor, hissing and smoking. Then with a loud clang, a circular section of the door fell inward. Beyond it was darkness. Fire, Vextor commanded. 20 plasma rifles discharged at once, filling the airlock with superheated bolts of energy. The barrage would have killed anything made of flesh, would have melted armor, would have turned the boarding party into vapor. When the firing stopped, Vextor peered through the smoke. Nothing. The airlock was empty. Where were the bodies? Where were the something small rolled through the opening? A cylinder about the size of Vextor's fist. It bounced once, twice, then stopped at his feet. Grenade, he shouted, but it was already too late. The cylinder didn't explode. Instead, it released a burst of light so bright that Vextor's eyes, all 4 of them, went blind. At the same time, a sound erupted from it, so loud and so painful that his ear canals felt like they were splitting. He staggered backward, his rifle falling from nerveless claws, his sense of balance completely gone. Through the ringing in his ears, he heard his warriors crying out in pain and confusion. And through the spots dancing in his vision, he saw shapes moving through the airlock. Fast, so terribly fast. The humans came through the smoke like ghosts, and they were nothing like Vextor expected. They were small, barely reaching 6 feet tall. Their bodies looked soft, weak, wrapped in some kind of powered armor that added bulk but still left them smaller than any Valtheran. They should have been easy targets. Should have been, but they moved like nothing Vextor had ever seen. They didn't charge straight ahead like honorable warriors. They used cover, ducking behind bulkheads and cargo containers. They threw more of those cylinders, filling the corridor with smoke and chaos. They fired weapons that made sharp cracking sounds. Projectile weapons like the ones used in the ship-to-ship combat, but smaller, faster, more precise. One of Vextor's warriors, recovering from the flashbang, roared and charged at the nearest human. The Valtheran was massive, fast, deadly, his claws extended, ready to tear the soft human apart. The human sidestepped at the last second, moving with impossible agility. As the Valtheran stumbled past, carried by his own momentum, the human struck him with the butt of her weapon. Once, twice, 3 times in quick succession, targeting nerve clusters that shouldn't have been known to outsiders. The warrior collapsed unconscious before he hit the floor. They know our anatomy, Vextor realized with horror. They know where to hit us. Another warrior opened fire with his plasma rifle, but the human was already moving, already behind cover. The plasma bolt hit the wall, leaving a scorched mark. Before the Valtheran could fire again, a small drone zipped through the air and attached itself to his weapon. There was a burst of sparks and the rifle died, its power cell overloaded. The human stepped out from cover and shot the warrior with some kind of electrical weapon. Blue lightning arced across the Valtheran's body, and he fell, twitching but alive. They're not trying to kill us, Vextor gasped into his communicator. Admiral, the humans are using non-lethal weapons. They're trying to capture us. But elsewhere in the ship, not all encounters were so merciful. In engineering, when the crew refused to surrender and tried to overload the reactor to deny the ship to the enemy, the humans responded with lethal force. The engineering team died quickly, efficiently, without cruelty but without hesitation. In the armory, when shock troops tried to access the heavy weapons, explosives charges placed by human infiltrators detonated, sealing the room and trapping the warriors inside. The humans moved through the eternal glory like they owned it, like they had studied every corridor, every access point, every defensive position, and Vextor realized with growing dread that they probably had. The probe they'd destroyed 3 months ago had probably scanned the ship during the encounter, had recorded everything, had sent the data back to Earth before being destroyed. The humans had known exactly what they were boarding. On the bridge, Admiral Crescithar listened to the reports coming in from all over his ship. Deck by deck, section by section, his crew was being overwhelmed, not by superior strength or numbers, but by tactics that were completely alien to Valtheran thinking. They're using our own ship against us, Zulvan reported, his voice strained. They've hacked into the environmental controls. They're depressurizing sections where our troops are gathered, forcing them to retreat. They're locking doors behind our warriors, splitting up our forces. They're playing audio recordings of fighting in empty corridors, drawing our people into ambushes. Sir, they're not just better equipped. They're better at thinking about combat. Kresthar understood. The Valthorans had evolved on a paradise world where resources were abundant. Combat, when it occurred, was about honor and strength. One-on-one battles where the strongest warrior won. They had adapted that mindset to space warfare, creating massive fleets that could overwhelm any enemy through sheer power. But humans had evolved differently. Their world had been harsh, unforgiving. They'd spent thousands of years fighting not just other species, but each other. They'd learned to fight dirty, to use every advantage, to think 3 steps ahead. They'd developed tactics for guerrilla warfare, for urban combat, for asymmetric conflicts where the weaker side had to be smarter to survive, and they'd brought all that knowledge to space. Seal the bridge, Kresthar ordered. Emergency bulkheads. Full lockdown. If they want this room, they'll have to cut through 3 feet of reinforced armor. The massive doors slammed shut with a boom that echoed through the bridge. Kresthar and his officers were now trapped, but safe. For the moment. They listened to the sounds of fighting grow closer, then fade. Listened to the ship grow silent, section by section. And they waited. Hours passed. Or maybe it was minutes. Time seemed strange when you were locked in a metal box, waiting for the end. Then they heard it. A faint sound on the other side of the bridge door. The hiss of a plasma torch. They were cutting through. Kresthar stood at the center of the bridge, his officers arrayed around him. They'd made a barrier of consoles and chairs, a last defensive position. Their weapons were charged and ready. If the humans wanted the bridge, they would pay for it in blood. The torch cut slowly, methodically, creating a perfect circle in the door. When it was complete, the section fell inward with a clang. Beyond it, Kresthar could see a human in powered armor, the helmet reflecting the bridge lights. Admiral Kresthar, a voice said, filtered through a speaker, but clearly female, clearly young. I'm Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen of the Terran Republic naval ship Valkyrie. You and your crew are under arrest for war crimes under the Terran Convention, specifically for the unprovoked attack on a civilian science vessel and the unlawful detention of prisoners. Kresthar almost laughed. War crimes? They were accusing him of war crimes? Your people weren't at war with us, he said. How can there be war crimes when there's no war? The human was silent for a moment. Then she reached up and removed her helmet. The face beneath was young, as he'd thought, with strange flat features and small eyes. But those eyes were hard, old beyond their years, scarred by things she'd seen. Commander, she said quietly, my species has been at war with itself for our entire history. We wrote rules about warfare 5,000 years ago. We know all about war crimes. And we know them when we see them. She gestured with her weapon, a motion that was almost gentle. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be. Order your crew to stand down. I'd prefer not to kill you. Kresthar looked at her, at this small, soft creature who had just captured his ship. And he made his decision. Stand down, he said to his officers. That's an order. Emperor Valthron the Eternal sat upon his throne in the capital world of Valthos Prime, listening to the emergency transmission from the Nexus corridor. His tail lashed back and forth in agitation, a sign of barely controlled rage. Around him, the Imperial War Council stood in shocked silence. Show me the recording again, the Emperor commanded. On the holographic display, the battle replayed, the mysterious human ship, the target locks, the relativistic projectiles that had torn through Imperial shields like they didn't exist, the drones that had outsmarted the Empire's best tactical computers, and finally the boarding action that had captured the flagship of Admiral Kresthar. One ship. One single ship had destroyed or disabled an entire battle group. Who are these humans? Valthron demanded. Grand Admiral Zexthor stepped forward, his armor gleaming in the throne room's light. According to our records, they're from a planet called Earth in the Sol system. We surveyed them 200 years ago. They were classified as pre-contact primitives. Our analysts predicted they wouldn't achieve faster-than-light travel for at least another 3 centuries. Our analysts were wrong, the Emperor said coldly. What else do we know about them? Very little, Majesty. They're a relatively young species. Their recorded history only goes back about 10,000 years. They achieved spaceflight less than 200 years ago. They should be... He paused, searching for words. They should be irrelevant. And yet they just humiliated the Imperial Navy. Valthran stood from his throne, his full height impressive even among Valthirans. Grand Admiral, mobilize the 7th Grand Fleet. 10,000 warships. Take them to this Sol system and show these humans what happens when you challenge the Empire. Destroy their homeworld. Leave nothing alive. Make an example that the entire galaxy will remember for 10,000 years. Zexathor saluted, claws against chest. It will be done, Majesty. The 7th Grand Fleet will depart within the day. And Zexathor, don't underestimate them again. They've proven they're dangerous. Treat this like a real war. Yes, Majesty. Far from the Imperial throne world, in a small cabin aboard the TRNS Valkyrie, Admiral Kresthar sat across a table from Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen. She'd brought him food, which surprised him. Real food, not prisoner rations. And she'd removed his restraints, which surprised him even more. You're being very kind to someone you consider a war criminal, he observed. Chen shrugged. A gesture he was learning meant something like ambivalence. The Terran Convention requires humane treatment of prisoners. Even enemy combatants have rights. These conventions of yours, Kresthar said carefully, they seem very detailed, very specific, as if you've spent a long time thinking about the rules of war. We have. Chen took a drink from a strange container, something she called coffee. Humans have been fighting wars for our entire existence, Admiral. We've fought over territory, resources, religion, ideology, or sometimes just because we didn't like how someone else looked. About 5,000 years ago, we started writing down rules, ways to fight without being completely barbaric, protections for civilians, treatment of prisoners, limits on certain weapons. You have limits on weapons? Kresthar was genuinely surprised. Why? In war, shouldn't you use everything available? We tried that. It didn't end well. Chen's face went dark. We developed biological weapons that could kill entire continents. Chemical weapons that caused horrible suffering. Nuclear weapons that could destroy all life on our planet. We nearly used them several times, came within minutes of ending our own species. She looked at him. That's when we learned that having weapons and using them are two different things. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. Kresthar thought about the relativistic projectiles, the non-lethal weapons used in the boarding, the precision that had disabled his ships rather than destroying them. But you're clearly willing to kill when necessary. When necessary, yes. But only when necessary. We didn't want to destroy your fleet, Admiral. We wanted to send a message. We wanted our people back. Mission accomplished, she set down her coffee. The problem is we know your empire won't stop. You can't. Your entire culture is built on dominance, on being the strongest. One defeat won't change that. You're right, Kresthar admitted. The Emperor will send a fleet. A real fleet. The 7th Grand will probably be mobilized. 10,000 warships, Commander. Your one ship defeated 47. How will you defeat 10,000? Chen smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. We don't have one ship, Admiral. She activated a display on the wall, showing him something that made his blood run cold. Star maps, tactical layouts, and ship counts. We've been preparing for first contact for 200 years, she explained. Ever since we detected your survey probe near Jupiter, actually. We knew we weren't alone. We knew that whoever was out there might not be friendly. So we prepared for the worst-case scenario. She zoomed in on the Sol system. We built a fleet. 100 ships like the Valkyrie, each one equipped with technology designed specifically to counter expected alien capabilities. We studied your transmissions, learned your tactics, understood your weaknesses. But more importantly, she continued, we didn't just build ships. We built defense platforms, thousands of them, scattered throughout the approaches to Earth. Each one is autonomous, equipped with the same weapons we used on your fleet. Kinetic kill vehicles, relativistic bombardment systems, AI-guided defensive networks that can coordinate strikes with microsecond precision. Kresthar stared at the display. The Sol system was a fortress, a trap waiting to spring your predators, he whispered. You knew we were coming. You planned for it. You wanted us to attack. Not wanted, expected. There's a difference. Chen turned off the display. Admiral, my species has been preparing for this moment since we first looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. We hoped for friends. We planned for enemies. Your empire proved we were right to plan. The 7th Grand Fleet arrived at the Sol system 3 weeks later. Grand Admiral Zexathor stood on the bridge of the flagship Infinite Victory, surveying his armada with pride. 10,000 warships, the largest concentration of military power in Imperial history. Scan the system, he ordered. Locate their homeworld. Sir, we've found it. Third planet from the star, and, sir, I'm detecting ships. Human ships. 12 of them forming a defensive line. Zexthor laughed. 12 ships? Against 10,000? Have they gone mad? Perhaps they're hoping to negotiate, sir. There will be no negotiation. The Emperor's orders were clear. Open fire the moment we're in range. He settled into his command chair. Formation Delta, maximum firepower. Let's end this quickly. The 7th Grand Fleet moved forward in a massive wall of ships, weapons charging, shields at maximum. It was an intimidating sight. A demonstration of imperial might that had made hundreds of worlds surrender without firing a shot. But the 12 human ships didn't retreat. They didn't even move. They just waited. Sir, sensors are detecting something else. A lot of something else. There are objects all around us. Thousands of them. They're small, but the sensor officer's voice rose in panic. Sir, they're powering up. All of them at once. Zexthor had a moment to realize he'd made a terrible mistake. The humans hadn't been overconfident. They'd been bait, and he'd fallen for it completely. The defense platforms opened fire. The 7th Grand Fleet was packed together for maximum intimidation, every ship within weapons range of its neighbors. It was a formation designed to look impressive. It was also the perfect target for massed kinetic bombardment. The platforms didn't fire all at once. They fired in waves, each wave perfectly coordinated by AI systems that processed battlefield data faster than any biological mind. The first wave hit the outer ships, crippling them. The second wave targeted ships that tried to break formation. The third wave hit the command vessels, and the 12 human ships weren't just sitting there. They were conducting the symphony, directing fire, identifying priority targets, ensuring maximum damage with minimum wasted ammunition. Zexthor watched his fleet die, ship after ship, disappearing in flashes of light as relativistic projectiles turned them into expanding clouds of debris. He tried to order a retreat, but half his ships couldn't receive the command. Their communications were jammed. Their sensors were blinded. Their weapons couldn't lock onto targets that moved too fast and too smart. In 6 hours, it was over. The 7th Grand Fleet was destroyed. 98% casualties. Only a handful of ships escaped, damaged and traumatized. Zexthor was among the survivors. His ship, badly damaged, limped back to Imperial space with a message from the humans. It was simple. We didn't want war. You brought it to us. Stand down, return our people, and respect our sovereignty, or we'll bring the war to you. Emperor Valthron received the message in his throne room. For the first time in his 300-year reign, he felt something that emperors aren't supposed to feel. Fear. He called for an emergency session of the Imperial Council. For 3 days they debated. Some wanted to mobilize the entire Imperial military, every ship in the Empire, and crush Earth once and for all. Others argued that such an action might trigger a conflict that would destroy the Empire. In the end, pragmatism won. The Emperor sent a diplomatic envoy to Earth.